Welcome to another episode of Distorted Opinions. I'm once again joined by Matt and Ted, and today we have a topic that is easily going to be split into multiple episodes. I don't know about you guys, I had to narrow it down. This week we're talking about TV show music, which is not to be confused with a previous show that we did on music shows. Today we're going to be focusing on the actual music of TV shows. So I know we've got a lot to talk about. Why don't we get right into it? Ted, why don't we start with you? What have you picked for this week?
Well, and so, knowing that we're talking about music in TV shows, I stuck to the themes, theme songs of television shows. And I kind of went through the mental Rolodex of all the TV shows that are out there, and some are super old, some are new. And I realized that there's certainly some common themes or themes of themes, categories of the particular TV themes that I've selected here. Mm-hmm. Obviously a television theme song is supposed to be catchy. It identifies the song. You hear it, you think of that show automatically. It's the main association. It's kind of like the short intro that we have for our podcast. It's supposed to be not super complex in general, and just quick to the point. You hear it, you know exactly what you're getting into, and get excited for that particular show. So some things that stood out to me for some of the show theme songs, there are shows that use the name in lyrics, such as Fresh Prince. Everyone knows Fresh Prince, and everyone knows the words, but Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is in the name, but the lyrics kind of tie it all together. Think of other shows like Rocko's Modern Life. The show's name.
Good.
Yeah, that was my favorite show ever.
So good. I love that show.
Yeah. So, but the lyrics describe the name of the show that you're going to be watching.
Right.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force, same thing. So there's certainly shows with theme songs that have lyrics that use the show's name, but then there's others that do not.
Right.
For example, there are shows that use a single instrument or to provide the melody. So I think of Seinfeld, it's the bass guitar. And granted, that bass line, you just get pumped up. And so, but that also carries through the entire episode. So I know, Kayla, you're talking about how music through the entire show has a theme in itself. Right. Seinfeld's a perfect example of that because it's just the bass guitar.
And who doesn't have that theme song stuck in their head now?
You're welcome.
Because I do. I do. Thank you. The rest of the day.
Yeah.
Do.
It's a very ironic, bass lick too. So I mean, even if you weren't a fan of watching of Seinfeld, if you heard that bass line, you would know it's from Seinfeld.
Right. So, but again, it's so unique. And it really makes the show stand out, when you think about that. And another one that came to mind would be the Andy Griffith Show with the whistling.
Yeah.
Right. So like the whistle in the similar fashion, it's very classic, it's, very unique, but you have that one instrument, voice, whichever, kind of carrying the melody. So it's very simple. And, you're able to associate the show, right away.
Right.
And then obviously there's other shows that are more extravagant that require full band or things like that, but are also, like I Love Lucy, that is more of a swing jazz band, kind of ensemble to play that theme. No words, it's just, now you think of it, everyone's thinking that song now.
Oh yeah, now that's replaced the Seinfeld bass line.
I've got a lot. So you have, things that are just more of an ensemble band. And then on the most extravagant, I would say, could think of Game of Thrones. Because the Game of Thrones intro, it's full orchestra. Granted, there are a billion people working on that show, and they need all sorts of title tracks to start it. So they need all that time. So good. Let's make a whole symphony piece just to open this thing while we roll through the intro credits. But you think about all those different varieties of intro theme songs. There's no one direct method to make a catchy song, because you can obviously attack it in any of those particular manners, but each one can be done, but describes the vibe of the show, if you will. So it was interesting to start piecing all that together, and now I'm going to watch more theme songs in the future and be like, oh, that they did it that way. That's really interesting. So
right.
I don't know, some fun tidbits for my picks for this week, and I won't mention. I'm just going to save my last note for the choice of the week. I'll just let that be. Okay. So, Matt, what do you have on your list for today, regional manager?
Indeed. Well, hey.
And for those listening on audio, he's wearing a shirt that says regional manager.
Well, first and foremost, just to kind of piggyback off of what you were talking about, Ted, is I don't know about you guys, but there are just some theme songs that are just so also motivating as well. And definitely the Game of Thrones theme song is just something that's like when you're listening to it and you're hearing those drums, you're hearing that symphony orchestra just like, dun, 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 dun. It's like, okay, I'm ready to do whatever it takes in order to get, our goal done today. So whether it's working out or, working on a project, it's just one of those motivational, theme songs that will really boost your system up. But hey, jumping right into it, I have 3 words. Bears beats Battlestar Galactica. Yes, I'm talking about the one and only.
Oh, and the audio cuts down.
Okay.
Nice try. You need to talk. It doesn't like you're whistling.
It's too high pitched.
Well, yeah. we talked about Andy Griffith, and hey, so we'll just forget about that. But yeah, The Office. It's funny. Office came out in 2005 and in 2013. It's originally based off of the BBC's original The Office, created by Ricky Gervais and Steve Merchant. And it was wow. Blah, blah, blah. It was executively produced by Greg Daniels. The theme song written by Jay Ferguson and performed by other than the Scrantones, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably going to get some Office flack from some diehard fans out there, but the Scrantones I feel is like a kind of like a made-up band, because ironically the Office is filmed, I'm sorry, not filmed, but pretty much located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But this was a show that, I kind of wish I could go back in time and really watch it from when it first debuted till the very end. Because,
and you can, because it's on Netflix.
Yes, I can. And not saying I have a life or whatnot, which I do, but hey, I may or may not be starting the series on a 6th time.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. But it's I know when I first was introduced to The Office, I really took advantage of it. Back then it was like, okay, whatever this is. But I really liked some movies that starred Steve Carell, which ironically is a local boy, around here. So, watching The Office now and kind of going back in time, just like there are a lot of stars on that show and even guest stars on that show that really, have like a great, acting career now. I mean, we have, Jenna Fisher out there. We have John Krasinski, Steve Carell. Who else? Who else do we got?
I think it was Craig Robinson.
Yeah, Craig Robinson. Ed Bloom. I'm sorry, Ed Helms. Well, Ed Bloom. Well, we're talking. Actually, I think that's the Mortal Kombat guy, but that's for a different episode. The theme song to The Office, the American version, is just it's a very ironic type of theme. Same exact thing. Ted. It's a theme that even if you didn't watch The Office, you knew that it was related to The Office in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Just the way that starting off on, you know, piano and then going right into a full band with an accordion was just something that, you know, again, was like a mind sticker, like a driving into the attention getter of the audience. And, you know, to this day, like I said, you know, I'm starting on for a sixth time. So, you know, and the reason why I'm pointing, you know, starting for the sixth time is, you know, I try to look at things differently, and, you know, different aspects of each episode too. But more importantly, what also got me into watching The Office again was because Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey of The Office, okay, who played Pam and Angela, ironically same name, they actually have their own podcast called The Office Ladies, and each episode is dedicated to one episode of The Office. So it's kind of like behind the scenes. So what makes it really intriguing to watching the series again after listening to this episode is they're referencing all behind the scenes of, you know, what they viewed and what the stories behind it. And then when you're watching the episode again, it's you get a different concept of the episodes. That's what I'm doing right now, especially for a sixth time. So that's pretty much, you know, what I was going to be focusing on, which was The Office. Have you guys watched The Office before?
I've seen episodes. Yeah, I haven't seen the whole series, but I've seen a few episodes here and there, and I've been meaning to sit down and watch it because I know so many people who have watched the entire series and rant and rave about it. It's kind of like I had never seen Parks and Rec, and I didn't get into that until, I don't know, it was maybe they were on like season 3, and a coworker told me about it and was like, you should really watch this show because doing what we do for a living is very similar to a lot of stuff on that show, and you will find it humorous. So I came home and I pulled it up on Netflix and I watched the entire series up to wherever they were at. It was a really good show, but I've heard good things about The Office, so I really need to watch the whole thing. The episodes that I have seen are hilarious. That is something, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's, you know, Parks and Rec, you know, again developed, you know, it was created by, you know, Greg Daniels as well as, and ironically, Parks and Rec was originally going to be kind of like a spinoff of The Office.
Oh, okay.
And they eventually said, you know what, we're going to make this a completely, you know, separate show. And even then, you know, they have some stars on there that, you know, are pretty big too, like Chris Pratt and, you know, Rashida Jones, who also was on The Office for a very short period of time. So again, kind of maybe getting some flack and whatnot, but a lot of people that watch The Office then jump into Parks and Rec may say, hey, you know what, Parks and Rec isn't as good as The Office. I kind of disagree, but I do have an opinion that, you know, the first two seasons of Parks and Rec is a little slow. Okay. As long as you pass through those 2 seasons, it gets so much better, and it gets so much more funnier as well.
I stopped on the 4th episode on the first season. I just couldn't get into it. I watched all the entire soup to nuts on Netflix, you know, The Office, all the episodes. Season 5, I think, was my favorite for The Office. But and then I was like, oh, Parks and Rec, you know, knowing the background, and I just couldn't get into it.
Really?
I think I saw episode 4 or 5, and I'm like, it has a funny premise, but it's just not coming together for me. And so if there's more coming after that, you know, season 3, I guess, is when it gets good. All right, I might revisit it just to ride it out. But
I definitely highly recommend it. I mean, it does get a lot better, gets a lot more funnier. You know, the actor, obviously, you know, having a, you know, brain fart right now, but the actor who plays Don Swanson, I mean, talking about like gung-ho American. Everything's about America. Everything's about me. You put something like a piece of in front of me, I'm going to rip your face off. He is just hilariously funny. And Amy Poehler, you know, I give a lot of respect to her. You know, I grew up with watching SNL all my life. Obviously, to a certain point, we won't reference the years that I highly respect, and then the years I don't really respect. But Amy Poehler was obviously a part of that SNL cast, which I really highly respected. And, Parks and Rec, again, you just kind of blow through the first two episodes. The first two seasons. When season 3 starts, it just gets so much better and whatnot. But that's what it is.
I was going to say, this is turning into a TV review as opposed to a music show.
Exactly.
We just did our own spinoff
I know.
to a different podcast.
So I'm gonna, So I'll retract back to the original aspect, and then Kayla will jump right into it. But The Office, the theme song, it's just incredible. Again, written by Jay Ferguson, performed by the Scrantones and whatnot, and Dinka Flicka. Okay, Dinka Flicka, which means that's life. So, Kayla, what do you have on your plate?
All right. Well, I have notes here, but I swear every time I write down my notes and we get into the show and you guys start talking about whatever you've brought to the table for each episode, I think of all these other things that I hadn't thought of. So I'm going to have to make a mental note to expand my list for the next show. I'm really going to stick to, I think, one show for today because, again, I'm going to talk about this for a while, and I could end up eating up 45 minutes of the show just talking about this. But my pick for today was a show that I really loved as a kid called Due South, which was on from 1994 to 1999. And if you're not from Canada, you're probably not familiar with it. It was a Canadian series about a Mountie who heads to Chicago on the trail of the killers of his father, who was also a Mountie. He ends up getting paired up with a Chicago detective who's helping him try to find the people who killed his father. And he ends up staying in Chicago as a liaison to the Chicago Police Department through the Canadian consulate. And it's a very great, there's a lot of comedy in it. It has a lot of great artists that, again, unless you're from Canada, you may not have heard of them, but there are a couple that people here in the U.S. have probably heard of. The original series music was all composed by Jay Semko, a singer-songwriter and the bassist for a Canadian band called the Northern Pipes. The compositions for the show were largely acoustic guitar and piano, and occasionally, because the main character, Fraser, hailed from the Northern Territories in Canada, and there's a lot of the storyline about him having spent a lot of time with the Inuit tribes. There's a lot of very heavy tribal, native-sounding percussion throughout some of the music, and it's just really, really, the original music is really good. But they also had a lot of well-known artists throughout the show. Some of the memorable episodes actually contain songs that were written and performed by the series star Paul Gross, including an episode called Mountie on the Bounty. That particular episode featured a song called The Robert Mackenzie, and originally the music they wanted to use for that was the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a Gordon Lightfoot song. Turns out, I guess, Paul Gross had actually been trying to pursue the rights to use that song during the show and opted not to use that out of respect for the families of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I'm not going to go into the history of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but it was a ship that ended up sinking on Lake Superior in November of 1975. So that particular episode is based loosely off of that incident. So instead of using the Gordon Lightfoot song, Paul Gross decided to write a song called The Robert Mackenzie, which has a lot of details kind of similar. And it's a really great song. It's one of the more memorable episodes and more memorable songs. But there are also a lot of other well-known songs and artists throughout the series. Sarah McLachlan, they used a ton of her music throughout the series, including Possession, Fumbling Toward Ecstasy, and Fear, among many, many other songs.
In the Arms of an Angel?
Did.
Or no?
No, I think that is one song that they did not use during
Making
the
sure.
series.
I don't know the show. I'm just asking.
No, they did use a lot of her other music, but not that song that I can recall. I think I would remember if that one was in it. She did also a song, I think it was her, I hope I'm not misspeaking. The final episode had a song called Holy Tears, and I think that was a song she wrote, and it's pretty much on par with Arms of an Angel, so basically the same thing. But there was so much good music there that I otherwise probably wouldn't have heard of as somebody who grew up in the U.S. It introduced me to some of my favorite songs that I still listen to regularly, including Sophia's Pipes by Ashley McIsaac, Oh What a Feeling by Junk House. And the general audience of this show would probably be most familiar with American Woman by the Guess Who, which showed up in the episode Diefenbaker's Day Off. So it was, again, all largely Canadian artists. A lot of really, really great stuff. They have, is it 2 or 3 volumes of the soundtrack that you used to be able to get on CD. I don't know if you can still get it on CD, but I'm pretty sure it's on Spotify. So if anybody wants to check out any music from the show, I highly recommend it. Again, great stuff there. And I'm not really sure whether or not I should go into, I did make notes on one other show.
Well, but I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So for a Canadian television show,
yeah,
how the heck did you find it in the 90s? Or did you discover it? I mean, you were talking about like
I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go to Maine and like some Canadian television shows, jump the border or like?
So I think if I recall correctly, they used to air reruns of it on TNT. Is TNT even still a network anymore? I don't know.
I don't have cable. I couldn't tell you.
I've always associated TNT with NBA. They always featured like NBA games.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I think that's how I found it was they would air the reruns on TNT. And actually, so, for what it's worth, I've only known one other person in the last 20 years that also knew that show. And it was my friend Emily, who we went to UMass together and we were in the band, and I was really surprised. I don't even remember how it came up, the topic of that show, but she was like, oh, I used to love that show. And I couldn't tell you how she found out about it because, again, she was from New Jersey, so it's not like she grew up in Canada.
Yeah, maybe it was one of those TNT premieres or something.
Maybe, but I'm pretty sure that's how I found out about it. I also had found out about another Canadian show called The Red Green Show, which used to be on PBS back in the day. And some of the people who were on Due South were also on that show, but it's a lot of really slapstick comedy about these 2 guys who run a lodge up in the middle of nowhere in Canada called the Possum Lodge. And it's basically like backwoods, and they're trying to do all these things. They have like a handyman corner segment, and everything involves duct tape. Duct tape is the secret.
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen YouTube clips of that show.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. That's also an excellent show. But again, it's a Canadian show, and I don't even know how I originally discovered it. I think, much like a lot of things when I was growing up, I think I just happened to be up late on a Friday or Saturday night, flipping through the channels, and came across it and decided to watch it. And I was like, this is hilarious, and ended up watching it regularly. But yeah, I don't know how I found out about these shows, but it was a really great show. It did get a little bit weird after, I think it was on for 4 seasons. It got a little weird after season 2 because David Marciano, who played the detective that was paired up with Fraser the Mountie, ended up leaving the show, and they ended up writing in, his character's name was Ray Vecchio, and they wrote in a new Ray Vecchio. So it was supposed to be the same character, but it was Callum Keith Rennie playing the part. And the whole thing was that the real Ray Vecchio went into witness protection for some reason, or he went deep undercover, and they needed to keep his identity like he was still in existence. And so they had Callum Keith Rennie replace his character and pretend to be Ray. And so the whole first episode of season 3 is Fraser came back from up in the northern part of Canada, and Ray is gone, but this other guy's claiming to be Ray. And so he's trying to get, what do they call that, impressions of his teeth and like fingerprints and stuff throughout the show, because everybody thinks he's Ray, but everybody's telling Fraser, no, that's Ray, and he feels like he's going insane, and so he's just trying to figure out who this guy is. And eventually the lieutenant, who hasn't been able to talk to him in a couple of days, calls him into the office at the end of the show and says, yeah, so the real Ray is deep undercover in this mafia thing. This guy is the new Ray. As far as you're concerned, he is Ray Vecchio. So anyway, again,
weird.
Yeah, and then after that, it just like there were parts of the show that got bizarre, but it was still a good show. But anyway, I think I just digressed into a whole other topic.
So what I got out of that is that if you are a screenwriter and you need to replace people, just blame it on undercover FBI identity. Just
right.
so great. It's a great excuse.
So, but then for what it's worth, the last the last episode of the show was a 2-part episode, and it actually involves the real Ray Vecchio being found. Fraser sees him going into a hotel room and knocks on the door and is like, Ray! And then it turns out he's in the middle of some dealing with a bunch of mafia guys that don't know that he's not whoever his mafia character was supposed to be. And then they end up having 2 Rays, because now the original Ray comes back because he's obviously not undercover because his cover's been blown. And then the Ray that so again,
that's the silliest writing I think I've ever heard.
It was bizarre. I'm not gonna lie, it was really, really bizarre. But yeah, so it is a good show. It is available on DVD if you're interested in watching it and understanding the full storyline. Get the DVD and check it out. So yeah, I think I'm going to just stick to that being my show since I've digressed so much. But when we revisit this topic, I certainly have plenty of other shows. I had a whole list, but
yeah, we'll have to definitely talk more on this. Will definitely be another multi topic episode.
We'll bring it up at a later date for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully if any of our viewers have some shows that they thought of, because I know that this got the gears turning for me, like Ted mentioned Rocko's Modern Life, the B-52s, very distinguishable theme song, very memorable, one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I watched some of those episodes more recently and didn't realize how many adult-themed jokes were in that show that went right over my head last time.
Just like Ren and Stimpy.
Right.
If you ever watch old Ren and Stimpy, there's a lot of adult-themed jokes that were I think us as, a younger audience, back then, that were just like, oh yeah, that's funny. Like, who would have thought, trying to, down some kitty litter is going to be, hilarious? No.
Well, and like a friend of mine in high school, I remember pointing out, because it didn't really occur to me the inappropriateness of some of the jokes in Rocko's Modern Life, but they called the chicken joint Chokey Chicken, which never registered with me that might have been inappropriate for children. But there's a lot of that, like even SpongeBob SquarePants, which is also a Nickelodeon cartoon. My aunt loves that show. She babysits and she watches it all the time. And even she's pointed out a lot of the adult-themed jokes in that go right over the kids' head. So I think that's Nickelodeon's way of trying to make it bearable for the adults who have to watch these over and over again. But yeah, just so many like that I love that show. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I've thought of a few other shows. Roseanne is another one with a really memorable, the original. John Popper, I think actually Blues Traveler, the entire band. I don't know if they did the first several seasons, but I know the last couple of seasons, it's definitely John Popper's harmonica playing. It's very distinct. You can tell it's him. And they actually had an episode with Blues Traveler in it that if you watch the show at all and the characters, Dan Connor apparently had been in a band with them before they made it big, and then he ended up leaving the band to start a family, and now he's going through some remorse that he didn't stick with the band because Blues Traveler made it kind of big. But that's another show.
Blues Traveler for Roseanne.
What's that?
I said he left Blues Traveler for Roseanne.
That's right. That's
right. That in. So Hook did not bring him back.
That's right. That's right. So it's I'm not going to start listing off all of the shows I had because my list grew significantly listening to you guys talk about the shows that you talked about. But hopefully our listeners and our viewers, if maybe that kind of got the gears turning for them, maybe you'd like to leave us a message over on our Anchor page, because when we revisit this topic, we'd love to work in some suggestions from viewers. So if you have not checked out that feature, anchor.fm/distorted opinions, there's a little message button over there. You can record a voice message and we can add it into the show at some point. But let us know if you thought of some songs, theme songs or soundtracks to TV shows, because we are definitely going to be revisiting this topic.
Or write us an email. Yeah, you don't have to do the voice message.
That's right.
Be happy to hear from anybody. What you think of, or have it, the conversation made you think of certain things. Feel free to email us. Kayla, what's the email?
It's distortedopinionsshow@gmail.com. And we'll put it on the screen.
Leave us a voicemail and an email, whatever.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So I know some people aren't comfortable with having their voices recorded. So yeah, like Ted said, just drop us an email if you prefer to go that method. But we'd love to hear what our audience has for suggestions as well, because I'm sure there are people out there that have suggestions that we aren't going to think of. So let us know. But on that note,
you may have a different opinion on what our suggestions are. We may be saying, hey, this is a great show, and you may think, hey, the show sucks. That's what the show's about. It's all about opinions, baby. All about opinions.
That's right. And on that note, speaking of more opinions, this might be a good time for us to go into our Song of the Week picks.
Kayla, why don't you start it off?
You want me to start? All right. So sticking with the show that I talked about, my pick of the week is a song called Mind by Vibrolux off of their 1999 self-titled album. It can also be found on the 1998 Due South Volume 2 soundtrack. As I was doing a little bit of research, trying to figure out more about the band, because I really didn't know much about the band, I actually discovered that they also did a song called Glitter Blues, which was used on the show Suits, which was another favorite show of mine, and I didn't realize there was a connection there. But Mind was used in the season 4 episode of Due South titled Good for the Soul. And so upon doing some research, I discovered that Vibrolux was founded by singer-songwriter and guitarist Steve Clark, also known as Stevie Vibrolux, in 1996. And Steve was apparently a very active member of the Toronto music scene until, unfortunately, he passed away in December of 2017. And I'm not quite sure what the cause of death was, but I was saddened to hear that he had passed away. I've listened to some more of their music since hearing it on the shows, and they have some really cool stuff. Mind has a really blues pop rock feel. It's kind of hard to describe. You have to kind of hear the song to understand the sound of it, but it's a cool song that's really stuck with me over the years, and it's one of my favorite tracks from the show. And interestingly enough, I don't even think it was a track that was used as a main song in any of the episodes. It was actually used as background music in a scene where they're raiding a nightclub in Chicago, and it's playing in the nightclub. So I didn't even really notice it watching the episode. It wasn't until I listened to the soundtrack, which, yes, I did have on CD because this was the 90s. And it's a really cool song. I highly recommend checking it out. So Vibrolux's Mind is my pick of the week. And do we want to go back in the direction we came? Do you want to go next, Matt?
It doesn't matter. All right.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. All right. Anyway, I'll just do it. All right. Easy enough. For the theme song, is my particular song of the week. We're in thinking about all the different shows and the different music varieties that go into the different theme songs. One that really stands out that was really different is the BoJack Horseman theme song. BoJack Horseman on Netflix came out in 2017. The theme song was created by Patrick Carney, and it's it starts out really trippy. There's such a unique set of sounds to start it off, and then the drums come in, and it's got a good groove to it at the end, and the saxophone that wraps up the whole tune really kind of stands out. And as we talked about earlier, when you hear a theme song, you think of that show. This theme song is so unique, you can't not think about BoJack Horseman. So definitely the BoJack theme is my pick for this week.
Awesome.
I like it.
Awesome.
I like it.
All right. Matt, what'd you pick?
Well, I'll have to go into The Office. Yes, I'm going back to The Office.
Someone is a mega fan, apparently.
Yes, I am.
6 times. All you talk about is The Office. Regional manager.
The Office, season 7, episode 1, the cold open. The song that I'll be referencing is from The Human Bends. The song's called Nobody But Me. This song was actually featured in the cold open of the beginning of season 7, and what's just great about it is that the whole cast does like this little mini dance routine, and throughout the whole cold open, and they're lip dubbing the actual song. But when listening to the song, it's kind of like a very upbeating type of tune where, I'd find it very hard for someone who's listening to this not to at least like nod their head or like tap their foot, because, when you're listening to it, you're going to want to go ahead and start dancing around. So again, for Office people who know what I'm talking about, yeah, it's an incredible tune and whatnot. So Human Bends, Nobody But Me. Song can be referenced on The Office season 7, episode 1, the cold open.
I don't even need to go get a clip for that because Matt's going to provide all the music.
What can I say? Hey, I'm not the assistant to the regional manager. I'm not the assistant regional manager. I'm the regional manager. Anyways. But yeah, hey, for guys that are listening out there, we'll be definitely going back to a lot of TV themed shows. Don't worry. This is not going to be the only episode. That's what's great about this podcast, whoever's listening, is that we'll be revisiting a lot of topics that we previously talked about. And, just like what Kayla and Ted said, if you have a topic, or if you have a suggestion, or if you even want to say, hey, I would love to be, a guest on the show for a certain topic, we would love to have you guys on. We can't express it enough. That's what's great about this podcast, is that we are open to the whole world. We want to hear your opinions, whether they're distorted or not. We want to hear your opinions based on anything that's related with music and whatnot. So other than that, yeah, send us an email, send us a voicemail, and do you guys have anything else that we want to
leave us a review on Apple Podcasts we can get higher ratings. That's one that we haven't mentioned yet, but definitely would help us on, being found for other folks.
Indeed.
And while you're at it, if you're on YouTube, follow us on YouTube, because until we get 100 people who are following our channel on YouTube, we can't claim a custom URL, which means that I have to paste a ridiculously long URL into every write-up that we do for the show. So it'd be nice if we could get a nice short URL like all of the other platforms, but we need 100 people at least to subscribe to us on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And also, if you're watching the video version, you can click on both Facebook and YouTube. There are little notification buttons to get reminders. Click those whenever we schedule a premiere of a video, because then you'll get a nice little reminder when it's going to go live if you want to be able to check it out. But yeah, I think, definitely rate us, subscribe. You can leave us a voicemail, write us an email. We have a lot of ways that you can get a hold of us. So definitely, let us know what you think.
We're responsive too, by the way.
That's right. We are.
We're 3 times more responsive than the average podcast.
That's right.
But like us, if you like us,
That was a dad joke. I apologize.
Oh,
we like you guys anyways, so
I'd like to think that it looks like we have fun on the show, so we would love to have people on to have fun with us. So just, get in touch. There are ways to get in touch. We've gone over them, and we put them into the video, and we put them into all the write-ups of the videos, so we are not out of reach.
That's right.
Guess. So if that's if you guys don't have anything else to add, I think that's the conclusion of this particular episode.
False. I do.
Oh, no.
Oh, Office reference again.
Oh, God. Oh, goodness. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching or listening, depending on where you're tuning in. And we appreciate the support, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.